Kobe's basketball journey started before he was even born. His father, Philadelphia basketball legend Joe "Jellybean" Bryant, was drafted 14th overall to a championship Golden State Warriors team in the 1975 NBA draft. However, after being selected, he was traded to the Philadelphia 76ers before the season began. From there, he moved on to the San Diego Clippers and later to the Houston Rockets, before finishing off his professional career in Italy, where a young Kobe grew up during his early years. Kobe did not have a usual upbringing. Not many kids could shoot around with Magic Johnson, have long conversations with Kareem, or practice their finger rolls with George Gervin. However, even though he had access to NBA royalty, Kobe's favorite player was his father. Young Kobe used to shoot on his kid's basketball hoop inside the house while his dad was playing, shooting while his dad shot, taking breaks when his dad's coaches called timeout. It was safe to say Kobe loved two things above all else: his father and basketball. After Jellybean's NBA career, he packed his family up and moved to Italy to finish out his basketball playing career. Kobe was going to the first grade at 6 years old. In many ways, this was Kobe's first true test. He was in a new place, he didn't speak the language, he was not used to the country's customs or culture. So the question was, would he crumble or would he rise to the occasion and surpass all expectations? As you can imagine, this is a lot for a young man whose dad travels so often for work in a new place trying to find his way. But Kobe adjusted well. This proved to be a very formative moment in Kobe's life. After adjusting to his new life, Kobe began to play basketball in Italy, a place that lacked the top-end talent of a place like the United States, and as you may have expected, Kobe dominated from day one.
Claudio allenava la squadra di Kobe, mi disse vabbè tanto è piccolino, facciamolo giocare. Iniziamo a giocare e dopo pochi secondi lui già aveva conquistato 3-4 volte la palla, aveva fatto 5-6 canestri.
Fummo costretti a levarlo perché stavamo 10-0, la palla non la toccava nessuno, né i compagni né gli avversari, allora lo levammo e lui molto arrabbiato non passò davanti alla panchina e andò direttamente dalla mamma piangendo. E da lì si vedeva subito che aveva sicuramente un carattere molto forte.
Piangevano in 9, non solo i 5 avversari più i 4 compagni di squadra perché non prendevano una palla, erano 3 anni più.
It was clear from day one that Kobe possessed the maniacal, perfectionist, borderline sociopathic gene that we have all grown to know and love about him today. However, Kobe was becoming big and began to outgrow Little Italy. It was then that he and his family began taking trips back to Philly during the summers, and it was there that Kobe found out exactly what he was missing out on. And then this happened.
So I come back to America in the summertime, I'm playing in the summer league, and I don't score a point the whole summer.
Not one point the entire summer?
Not 1 point. Not a free throw, not a layup, not a steal, nothing. 0 points the whole summer. And my father came up to me afterwards, he gave me a hug and said, son, don't worry about it. We're gonna love you if you score 0 or 50. You know? And I just remember thinking, thank you.
This was just another test for Kobe. Would he crumble or would he work so hard to match and then surpass his American counterpart? And I think we all know the answer to that one. Joe Bryant retired when Kobe was 14 years old, an 8th grader. He spent a year in the middle school ranks before going to high school, and that's when the legend began. Today we have LaMelo Ball, seemingly built for the limelight, preordained for stardom. We have Zion Williamson, a man amongst boys, the second coming of the human highlight reel. And this is all thanks to social media. But before the Ball boys and before the Zion Williamsons of the world, we had Kobe goddamn Bryant. Kobe was LaMelo before LaMelo. Before social media, Kobe was the it boy. He was on magazine covers, signing autographs, selling out arenas, kissing babies, and playing on ESPN. He was the template for what today's social media darlings have become. He was a 6'6", handsome, charismatic basketball phenom from the tough city of Philadelphia, who captured the hearts of America and its teenage girl population before stepping foot on an NBA court. I mean, the guy went to prom with R&B star Brandy. To put that into context, that's like me going to prom with Zendaya. The offer still stands. The dude was clearly a shooter in more than one way and destined for stardom. Now let's hop back into the time machine and take it back to the day when Kobe was just a young 17-year-old prospect for Lower Merion High School. Kobe went to the NBA straight out of high school, which was an almost unheard of thing at the time. People thought high schoolers were too young, too raw, and too underdeveloped. There were busts like Bill Willoughby, who scared teams so much that they didn't draft another high schooler for another 20 years. And that high schooler just so happened to be Kevin Garnett. Opinions of guys these young were heavily influenced by the success of players like Kobe and KG, which led to an era of high schoolers getting drafted, which led to quite a few busts like Darius Miles, Darrell Wright, Jonathan Bender, and household name, crowd favorite, and future Kobe Bryant teammate Kwame Brown, which in hand resulted in the one and done rule that still plagues us to this day. During his senior year at Lower Merion, Kobe Bryant averaged 30.8 points, 12 rebounds, 6.5 assists, 4 steals, and 3.8 blocks per game. Some of his accolades were the Adidas Camp MVP, Pennsylvania State Championship winner, Pennsylvania's all-time leading scorer, Naismith High School Player of the Year, Gatorade National Men's Basketball Player of the Year, a McDonald's All-American, USA Today's All-USA First Team, and Lower Merion's all-time leading scorer. Young Bryant is a 6'6", 190-pound perceived combo guard with a whopping 6'11" wingspan, which pairs with his insane 8'9" standing reach that grades out as a plus 2.5 and plus 4 inches respectively, longer than your average shooting guard at the NBA Draft Combine since Draft Express has been keeping measurements, which gives him some equity as both a combo guard and a small forward at the next level. At this current juncture, Kobe is relatively thin and will need to put on meaningful, functional strength to be able to play at the next level. As it currently stands, he will be bullied off the court by bigger, more mature players despite his other physical gifts. This being said, he's 17 years old with a projectable frame. In time, his body will mature and naturally put on weight. Kobe has pretty quick feet and does a good job turning his hips on the defensive end with pretty good reflexes and burst. Kobe is also a guaranteed future dunk contest contestant, as he is as good of a vertical athlete as you can ask for from a 17-year-old 6'6" guy. Nope, shut up, you don't exist yet. When evaluating a dude this young and this talented, he is sure to have at least some confidence in himself. It's sort of necessary to get to the level that he has at this point. But Kobe? If there's anything that Kobe had, it was the nerve. I mean, look at the kid. He's fucking bald at age 17. Do you know how much confidence you have to pull that off? I was bald because of a haircut gone bad in like 7th grade and got fucking called Little Bill for a few months. Had to wear hoodies all the time. In Florida. In the summer. Just look, the guy exudes self-confidence.
I just had an opportunity to go in the other locker room. I asked the starting 5 what they thought of you. 2 of them said, well, we think we can contain them. 2 others said, we think we're going to win the game. And I'd like to know what you think. Watch you?
He is an aggressive scorer and will force shots on offense, to the point that at times I question his feel for the game. You will live and you will die by Kobe Bryant. Rumor has it, Kobe is as competitive as they come, and on tape it shows. He brings it every night on both ends, and there are endless anecdotes about Kobe outworking everyone around him, including veteran NBA players at his young age. This bodes extremely well for his future and gives me much optimism that he will eventually do what it takes to make up for his deficiencies. Bryant is slight of frame but does not lack aggression. He has an issue of trying to finish with a bit too much finesse, oftentimes contorting his body into odd shapes and trying to finish at weird angles, or with the finger roll instead of just using his body to draw contact or get fouled with his athleticism and size combination. It's like he sees an open lane and decides to get cute with the finishes and forgets that he's 6'6", 195 versus a bunch of kids who are barely scratching 6'1". I did notice that when the games got close, he used it a good bit more and didn't shy away from contact, so I'd say it's a bit of a mixed bag here. Putting on muscle will surely help him with the finishing because at times he misses some really easy bunnies. You can tell he really understands how much weight his decisions bear on the defense and uses pump fakes and ball fakes to get the defense frozen to rip through and finish at the basket. Kobe has flashed a good understanding of cutting and setting himself up for easy alley-oops from his teammates. Kobe also does a good job at drawing fouls, and I only expect him to improve upon this and finishing through contact as he puts on the pounds. Kobe is a solid, smooth jump shooter. His form may be a bit unorthodox considering the jumper set point places the ball at the top or middle of his head with the elbow at forehead level. He gets a consistent extension of his elbow on every shot. and keeps things consistent. He does not have the picturesque form of a Steve Kerr, but his jumper is effective, and its high set point allows him to get off some tough shots that would be otherwise impossible to get off, which when paired with his outlier height and length for a guard prospect, it could lead to some absolutely nutty displays of shot making, especially in the mid-range area, where he has already perfected what many people, including me, could only dream of. The Michael Jordan signature mid-range game with the prerequisite footwork down pat at the age of only 17. Jordan is one of the best mid-range creators ever. Getting that footwork and jump shot down pat at that age requires divine intervention. There is no other explanation for how Kobe mastered his moves before he could even get a tattoo without parental permission. Bryant is also a 78% free throw shooter on the lion's share of attempts, which is indicative of his touch, which gives me confidence in him as a jump shooter long term. His jumper already stretches out to and extends slightly past NBA range. He is a legit shooting prospect. Kobe has a nice handle, although it is a bit looser than I'd like. He loves to bust out the hanging crossover, later renamed the Iverson crossover, and has shown the ability to string moves together. Sometimes he dances a bit with the ball, dribbling just for the sake of dribbling, and not really gaining much of an advantage on his defender. But his first step is so wicked that it simply doesn't matter sometimes. His handle sometimes gets away from him, causing him to lose the ball more than he should for a guy who considers himself a point guard at the next level. Even for a larger point guard, his handle is not advanced enough. It's good enough for a 2 or 3, but not much inspiration for him being your team's primary ball handler if being guarded by ones. He's likely to have to play with another ball handler, and he should not be the only ball handler in your lineups. I was thoroughly surprised when I saw how good of a passer Kobe is. You see a high-level scoring talent and you just sort of assume that he's not much of a passer because he's too busy gunning and shooting. While that is true of Kobe from the gunning and sometimes taking shots he should pass up perspective, you can tell he is a really gifted passer with plus vision, even at this level without much talent on the roster around him. Kobe can deliver the ball in a multitude of creative ways, but he loves to give dump-off passes to his big men when he drives and the defenses suck in on him. He is keenly aware of how his actions stress the defense and uses it to get his teammates open. Most 17-year-olds are not capable of this. It's like everyone else is playing checkers while Kobe is playing chess. You can really tell he's been around high-level basketball for a long time. But the playmaking is not all good. Kobe tries to go for the home run play way too often, looking to be on SportsCenter rather than making the simpler, more efficient pass. He forces passes sometimes too, but he is generally a very good decision maker with the ball at his hand, which gives me a lot of optimism for his future on-ball equity as a high load bearing guard. Kobe was as prolific of a scorer as you can be at the high school level, but he still left me feeling cheated. I wanted a little bit more. Was this the Kobe Bryant I waited so long to see? The one everyone's been whispering, hey, this kid might be the goods. For a guy that size with outlier athleticism, I expected him to settle for jumpers a lot less than he did. He is too big and too quick and too good to be settling for mid-range jumpers, even if they are a very efficient shot for him. His shot distribution could be cleaned up a decent bit and take his scoring from good to great. He's a good cutter off ball from the perimeter, and you can see flashes of that because coaches ran him in the high post, making him run elbow to elbow depending on what side of the court the ball was on. I am not sure here if I should really knock him down much for shot selection because, as I said, it is his greatest asset as a player. He's able to knock down shots from anywhere in a variety of ways and willing to pull up at any time in any situation, which helps stress the defense and in turn helps with his on-court gravity. As we mentioned earlier, he has some playmaking chops, so if he were to use his gravity for good and lean a bit more into being a better quote-unquote team player, his teammates would be much more appreciative and he would be a better, more winning player. Kobe oftentimes manned the 4 or the 5 for his teams for obvious reasons, which allowed us to see him on the back line of the defense. This allowed me to clearly see how he fared as a team defender and rim protector, where he averaged 4 blocks a game, which is quite good for a guard and is indicative of good reflexes. Kobe has a ridiculously long wingspan for a guard, which makes it near impossible for guys to get their shots off, on, or around his contest. However, Kobe offers a lot less rim protection than the numbers would suggest. He is a prime example for why blocks and steals are not necessarily indicative of good defense. He, just by virtue of being the biggest, most athletic guy on the floor at all points in time, can get blocks rather easily. So the 4 blocks per game are certainly impressive, but need to be ran through a fine-tooth comb. As I mentioned earlier, Kobe really needs to put on weight, because it's really easy for offensive players to dislodge him due to his slim frame. Kobe oftentimes offers little to no actual resistance at the basket unless he is going for a block. He watches guys get to the basket and offers very little help from positioning or using his body as a deterrent perspective. It was really difficult to evaluate Kobe's man or perimeter defense because of where he played on the floor. He's oftentimes the back line of the defense, so I found it very difficult to gauge his perimeter play. So everything I say in this section is working on a limited sample size. That being said, he's certainly impressed on ball. Kobe has really quick feet and lateral movement and does a good job of not only staying with his man, but beating them to their spots off the dribble. When on ball and engaged, he is a force to be reckoned with on the perimeter, with his length, quickness, and lightning quick reflexes. I wish there was more for me to say, but like I said, his high school team played him as a big on defense, so it was sort of difficult to find him playing perimeter defense unless he was switched on to someone or the defense broke down and he just had to go out and guard someone. But generally, he was a terror and really seemed to take. Kobe Bryant is a future star in the making. His combination of size, athleticism, work ethic, and shot making make him a tantalizing prospect. What separates him from the other players with similar attributes is his skill. He is a legit passer, shooter with advanced IQ and feel for the game. Will he contribute from day one? No, he's 17 years old. He physically just can't hang out there right now. But if I know anything about Kobe, getting tossed around out there will only serve as fuel to his fire and encourage him to work that much harder to become a positive NBA player. Now I want to discuss the 3 outcomes I can see realistically for Kobe Bryant. The high-end outcome is a top 5 player in the NBA, a two-way superstar. Kobe's upside is legitimately a Michael Jordan clone. A guy who can operate as your primary ball handler, you can build an offense around him, he can be one of the most talented scorers ever while being an overwhelmingly positive on defense, both on and off ball. If Kobe cleans up his shot making a bit and learns to trust his teammates more and fully unleashes that playmaking ability on the league, I have a hard time seeing him fail. Next, I want to get into that median outcome, which is a franchise cornerstone, a top 30 player. Kobe will end up one of the better scorers in the NBA while being a very good on-ball defender and pretty meh as a team defender. He should be played primarily as a tertiary player. Think more Scotty than MJ. This is all dependent on his advancements as a ball handler and playing more in the flow of an offense. If he can develop those things, he can reach his high-end ceiling. Now let's discuss the low lights. For a low-end outcome for Kobe Bryant, he's definitely a starting low-impact scoring guard. There's a chance that Kobe is an inefficient player with good to great shot-making flashes. It's his way or the highway, so you have to build around his inefficient style of offense, or you'll just have to get rid of him. He will put up his numbers, his teams might end up lower-level playoff teams, but he will ultimately cap your ceiling. Someone you can give the ball to, and he'll do his thing and get buckets for an inefficient offense. The passing flashes may have been just that, flashes, and never materialize into anything meaningful. That being said, Kobe was a fun prospect to watch, and I personally am willing to bet he reaches his high-end outcome due to his pedigree and the legendary stories I hear about his work ethic.